Thanks everyone for joining us today. Just our quick disclaimer, this presentation is for educational purposes only. It's not legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship for anyone who's a non-client. And we'll have some information at the end on contacting us if you have specific questions or if you're interested in signing up for our services if you're not a current client. Also, so that you can get on with your day. Today, we're going to move through this information somewhat quickly. Our topic, employee training programs. So why have employee training programs? Isn't it just good enough if I hire my people, kind of tell them a couple things and then just let them go at it? Well, there's some important reasons for your business to have training programs in place for your employees. The first one is consistency. You want, even if you're a small employer, you want to have regular, predictable, and consistent systems in place to get employees up to speed to perform their jobs. That's very important. You want, with whatever your business is, you want consistency in your processes and you want consistency in your results. So that's one of the reasons why training is a useful tool for employers. Training can also capture and pass along your important information about your business or technical information. You want to make sure that your employees aren't missing anything important in their work for you. You need to let them know what always has to be done, why you do it, how you do it. This type of consistency and this training can be especially important if you've got a highly technical process or industry that you're involved in. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit, but it's just that is an additional incentive if you're in some type of industry where it can be extremely technical. And then another important reason for having employee training programs is compliance. Your obligations as a business, as I probably don't need to tell you, there's a lot of things you need to do as a business to meet your legal requirements under the law. So training can be an essential part of meeting your legal requirements. If you're not in compliance with various requirements, it's going to cost you money potentially. And it's also basically what we would call an unforced error. It's a situation where you've made a mistake that you didn't need to make in terms of compliance, and training is maybe a way to help lessen that risk. We're going to discuss a little bit about employee training programs, and specifically, there may be some in here that you've thought of, there may be some that you have not, but these are just some general ideas for employers, for people that run businesses, of the different types of training that are available and why and what they are. First is onboarding training. That focuses really on integrating new hires into the company culture while providing them with the resources they need to be successful in their roles. I mean, that may sound self-explanatory, and most employers probably do something, but this is actually a very important style or type of training that is needed for businesses. You want to bring people into your workplace properly. It's not just, properly filling out your I-9 within the correct time frame. You also need to let them know about employee benefits, your work processes, how your information technology system works, your email, any other communication systems they use, if there's company vehicles. That is a critical part of onboarding training for new workers. And even in some states like California, employers have to provide mandatory sexual harassment training within a certain time frame, so that really can be rolled into your onboarding training as a requirement. Another type of training that employers use is technical training. That teaches new employees about the technological aspects of their job. Again, that might sound self-explanatory in some ways, but really it can be critical for the functioning and bottom line of your business. For example, if you work in retail, technical training might teach employees how to use a computer system to ring up your customers. I mean, that's very important to your bottom line. You don't want mistakes there. Any mistakes with that sort of thing directly affect your revenue, and they can be costly in other ways as well. For technical training in a more mechanized setting, it could also be a safety issue. for example, if you're working in something that involves mechanical assembly, you want to have some sort of technical training, and we'll talk a little bit about safety as well momentarily, but you want to have information provided to your employees to make sure they know what they're doing, and you can help avoid mistakes in the technical area. Regulatory compliance training, that focuses on what we had discussed a moment ago. What are your obligations for regulatory compliance? How do you adhere to those, and what are some of the penalties for violating them? You could, with your regulatory compliance training, talk about things like, what do we need to file mandatorily for the government? Are there reports? Are there, anything we need to submit? What are the time frames? Those are the kinds of things that may be discussed. You may have industry specific rules depending on what your business is that requires you to do certain things. And that gets into this compliance piece, as well as confidential information, and if you work in the medical field, patient confidential information. So there are a number of regulatory issues that you want to train employees on to bring them up to speed. So in addition to medical, which we just mentioned, also you have a lot of requirements if you're in finance, if you work in banking, financial services, if you're in the insurance industry, you work in employee benefits, or you work in construction. There's a lot of regulatory compliance issues and potential training that employees need to be aware of. Managerial training. That is very, very important for a lot of companies. It would benefit those businesses if they have their managers well trained, not just something informal, but something a little more structured. Your managers, really, if you think about it, they're your first line of defense for your business. They're interacting with your customers / clients. They interact with and direct your employees. They implement your policies. They also receive reports regarding harassment. If there's a discrimination issue, if there's a retaliation issue, they need to be aware of their obligations to help protect the company, keep the company informed on what's going on, and making sure that they're on top of things. So a lot of companies do manager training if someone's promoted or someone's brought in as a manager to make them aware of those obligations. Leadership training, that will help an organization with the current individuals who are running it, but it also helps if there are new people who are going to be brought in periodically to help run the business. Leadership training comes into play with basically your day-to-day operations, how to make them more efficient, more successful, but also leadership training is good with continuity ongoing with the business, and also any succession plans down the road that might come into play. Leadership training basically focuses on interpersonal abilities while emphasizing the leadership qualities and skills of those who are leading others. Some additional types of employee training programs to consider as a business. Safety training. That teaches employees how to recognize and prevent workplace hazards and how to respond to emergency situation. Really, some type of safety training is a best practice for all employers, regardless of your industry. So the real base level would be something like fire prevention or a process if there's a fire alarm, severe weather training, severe weather policy, process, those sorts of things. Also workplace intruder training, that falls under safety. What do we do? Those are kind of, like I said, at a base level, probably a best practice to have something for all employees in any industry. For some employers, safety training may be required. If you work in construction, if you work in manufacturing, if you work in some aspects of the medical field, there may be some, depending on the location and type of specific work being done, there may be some specific safety trainings that need to be provided to employees. Product training, I would also say with a product, I would lump a service under that. So basically whatever the deliverable of your business is, so product or service training, we'll just say product here. Product training will teach your employees the detailed features of your products or services. That can be very useful with your outside sales force, the people that are out in the field. If you have people doing that work, they need to know what you're selling inside and out. Again, whether that's a product or a service, those folks need to be trained up so they know exactly inside and out what you're doing. But also that type of training is needed for internal workers as well. Your inside salespeople, if you have them. Any management members need to know what you do, what it is, how to explain it to someone. Additionally, if you have staff that work in customer service or any kind of customer relations, they need to be trained to very thoroughly understand your business so that they can explain it and work with people if an issue comes up. The last two listed here are a bit more kind of touchy-feely, somebody might say, but they are still important. A team building type of training that helps develop cohesiveness among team members, allowing them to get to know each other and facilitate relationship building. A lot of times they're done outside of work. I mean, many of us have probably done the company obstacle course thing, the mini golf, raced go-karts, or done the basket weaving class at the park. These events can also have value as training exercises. It's a chance to interact with coworkers, not directly in a work-related system, but it is also a way for leadership to kind of demonstrate some of the values in those outside situations so that it is actually a teachable moment through training of what the company's all about. And then last, soft skills training. That can improve workplace professional success of your employees. So think of things like communication training, adaptability, problem solving, time management, organization. Those are the soft skills. You're not teaching somebody how to design a piece of equipment. You're teaching them how really to work more efficiently. That can be done through training, and it can make overall for a more efficient and well-run business. All right, so how do you provide employee training? There are some different methods that are generally used. We'll talk about them, and we'll talk about the pros and cons of those. So the first, in-house training. You're doing it yourself. The pros of that method are you come up with your own materials and programs. Gives you the most control. It's also the most cost-effective. You're not paying for any outside resources. If you have on-site employees, they can be trained in person at the workplace, and it's easier during an in-person or in-house training for employees to ask questions and have a discussion. The cons of in-house training would be you might miss something critical along the compliance lines or something else. If you do it yourself and you're not fully aware of all the obligations potentially, you may miss something. The next type of training is online. The pros with online training is that there are a huge variety of topics available from many, many different sources. The list is basically endless of the online training programs you could use. You can schedule them when they work for your employees. That is one of the pros. The cons of using online training would be if you have to do something, it's mandated by law for your industry or just generally. You want to make sure that any online training that you're using complies with your requirements. Again, going back to the California sexual harassment required training. If you don't want to just use any training, you'd want to use one that would meet with California requirements. Another con of that is that there's going to be likely some cost involved with it. Another type of training that can be done is in-person professional training, meaning you hire somebody to come in and present, whether it be they present live through a conferencing app, or they actually come to your business. So the pros of that is it's likely very thorough. Another pro is that it's easier to make sure that they meet all your compliance obligations. In fact, you would get that in writing from the organization or person presenting the training. Hey, this meets, again, back to California, all the requirements of the state sexual harassment training for employees. You get that in writing from them, so you know, hey, my bases are covered. I've hired this person. They've attested that they comply. you're going to get most likely a good result. The cons of the in-person professional training, it's the most expensive option, most likely. Another area where people gain training from is from government programs or a program from your insurance company, like your business liability insurance company may have something available to you as a policyholder. Pros, again, it's likely compliant with what you need for the specific training program, especially if it comes from like a state agency in the state where you're operating. Same for an insurance company, hopefully it would be compliant. The cons, again, there could be some cost. You just have to look on a case-by-case basis. And overall, with the different methods of providing training, even the more expensive trainings can be really worth the cost when you think about it, because it could increase your productivity and value. It can reduce your risk. So really employers should think of it as an investment. How can we help with training for employers? We can advise on compliance, which trainings are required. For example, the sexual harassment requirements, not just California, some other places as well have mandatory employee sexual harassment training. So we can advise you on those types of things. We can discuss training options with you. With the list that we just went through on the previous slide, what are you thinking? What works for you? Are you concerned about budget? Those sorts of things. And then we could also provide best practices information. Even if a training isn't required by law, it's often a good idea to pursue anyway. Back to sexual harassment training, even if your state that you operate in doesn't require it, it's still a good idea to have that training for all employees. That helps reduce your risk of liability. Again, some type of maybe base level safety training, that can also help you. So those types of things are areas that we can provide some information on. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your attendance. Remember the catchphrase, compliance is not optional. If you need help, make sure you reach out with any questions and we will be happy to discuss with you. Thanks again and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Michael. That was some really great information that gave attendees a lot to consider about employee training programs. If you'd like us to help and are already a client of ours, you know that you can go into our client portal, open a ticket, and speak to an attorney like Michael. If you're a business owner or an HR professional and aren't a myHRcounsel client yet, but understand the value of having unlimited HR and employment legal advice whenever you need it, starting at just $149 per month, reach out to us at info@myHRcounsel.com. We hope that you have a great rest of the day, and once again, we appreciate you for attending.